The Rainbow Bridge, A Visit to Pet Paradise by Adrienne Rayside. And this book is very special to our family because we bought it after we lost our cat Stu to cancer. And we just bought it as a way to comfort ourselves and figure out, where do pets go spiritually? Adrienne Rayside captures the special bond between humans and their pets, and with marvelous illustrations brings a gentle humor to a story that will resonate with children and pet lovers of all ages. 7-year-old Rick and his beloved dog Coco are inseparable. They cavort in the swimming pool, chase each other through the fields, play fetch and wrestle. But Coco grows old and his health declines until one day Rick comes home and finds Coco gone. Rick is devastated, but one night he is woken from a sleep by Buster, a flatulent but well-intentioned messenger dog, who suddenly appears at the boy's bedside. Buster flies Rick to a magical paradise where faithful pets of all kinds frolic happily while waiting to be reunited with their human companions. This is actually a really cute story. Here's the Rainbow Bridge. It was the perfect summer day for a boy and his dog, especially for a 7-year-old boy named Rick and his beloved dog Coco. These days were long and the weather was hot, and Rick and Coco spent most of their days splashing about in the swimming hole near Bear Creek. Rick would dive under the water, leaving Coco to paddle around, pretending to look for him. Rick would surface and spit water at Coco, then Coco would bark and flick water at Rick with his tail. After they tired of the water, they'd chase each other through the fields. Back to the house. Rick would grab a snack and watch cartoons while Coco would play with his well-chewed squeaky bone. It felt like summer would never end and Rick and Coco would play forever. But like the seasons, all things must change. As the leaves turned from green to gold and the days got cooler and shorter, Coco seemed to slow down. He didn't run as fast as the wind anymore. He didn't wake Rick up every morning with his wet tongue and blast of bad doggy breath, and he lost interest in chasing squirrels up trees. Even his beloved squeaky bone sat unchewed in the corner of his stinky basket. Mom thought she knew the reason. Coco's getting old and needs more rest. Besides, he's 15 years old. That's 105 in dog years. Much older than you, Ricky. Then, one frosty December morning, Coco didn't even get out of his basket to see Rick off to school. He lay in his stinky basket, his big brown eyes following Rick around the room as he collected his books and lunch. Rick stroked Coco's head. "Do you think Coco is sick?" Mom bent down to look at Coco, who whimpered and managed a feeble tail wag. "I don't know, Ricky, but Dad and I will take Coco to the vet this morning." Rick put Coco in a headlock, scratched him behind the ears, and raced out to catch the school bus. "See you this afternoon, Coco. Don't growl at the doctor," he shouted as he ran out the door. Ricky could barely concentrate on his schoolwork all day, thinking about Coco. He raced home from the school bus, anxious to hear what the vet had said. Bursting into the kitchen, Rick froze in his tracks. The stinky basket was empty. He looked around the kitchen in a panic. "Where's Coco?" he shouted. Mom and Dad were sitting at the kitchen table. It looked as if Mom had been crying. Dad said, "Ricky, Coco was a very sick dog and was in great pain. I'm so sorry to tell you that Coco died today. He passed away peacefully in my arms." Tears streamed down Rick's face. He wanted to say something, but the lump in his throat wouldn't let him. He picked up Coco's squeaky bone, ran upstairs, and threw himself onto the bed. That night he sobbed himself to sleep, with Coco's squeaky bone tucked firmly under his pillow. Over the next few days, the house felt strange. Nobody barked when the mailman walked past. No clickety-clack of claws on the kitchen floor. No wet nose at the table every time food was served. Mom and Dad did their best to cheer Rick up. Besides, Christmas was just days away. But it was no good. He missed Coco terribly. The night before Christmas, Rick shuffled past the brightly lit tree, barely noticing the twinkling lights. This was going to be the worst Christmas ever. Later that night, Rick woke suddenly. He thought he heard the squeaky bone. From under the bed came a snuffling sound. Rick leaned over and came face to face with a scruffy old yellow lab with Coco's squeaky bone in his mouth. "Humph," said the dog. He dropped the squeaky toy out of his mouth and tried again. "Howdy." "Howdy," said Rick, confused. "I've never heard of a dog speak before." "All dogs speak. You just don't listen properly," replied the dog. A foul stench filled the room. Rick choked and covered his nose with a corner of the bedspread. He looked at the big dog suspiciously. "Is that you?" "All dogs fart too." The strange dog picked up the squeaky toy and wandered toward the open window. Rick jumped to his feet and snatched the bone out of the dog's mouth. "That's Coco's toy, not yours." "Ugh, you drool almost as badly as Coco." He wiped the bone off on his pajamas. The dog smiled. "I know. I'm taking his squeaky bone. I'm taking him his squeaky bone. He forgot it. But Coco is at the Rainbow Bridge." Rick stared at the big dog. "No, Coco is dead." He paused. "What's the Rainbow Bridge?" "Not for you to know. Now give me back that bone. I must be going." Rick put his arms around the old dog's neck. "Please, take me with you." "Sorry, that's against the rules." The dog leaned back, poised to leap out of the window. Rick jumped up on his back and clung on for dear life as the dog cleared the window. Rick braced himself to hit the ground, but to his amazement, the dog hovered over in midair. Rick hung on to the dog's smelly fur tightly. The dog turned to Rick. "Okay, if you insist, but you have to promise you won't tell anyone what you're about to see." "Yes, I promise." Rick peered down at the yard far below him. "Are you sure this is safe?" "Been doing dog toy pickups for years. Hold on tight." The dog loped through the air. The town slept below them, with only a few outside dogs barking greetings as they passed overhead. Faster and higher they flew, climbing through the clouds. The air got chilly, and Rick buried his face in the dog's neck, immediately emerging to spit out a wad of fur. "Phew, you need a brushing, big time." The dog turned around and shrugged. "Nobody has to get brushed at the Rainbow Bridge." Rick wasn't so sure how they got from the clouds to soft grass, but suddenly he was going down on a big, bright green meadow, or looking down. The dog came in for a landing, hitting the ground hard, sending them both tumbling on the soft grass. Rick picked himself up, brushed daisies out of his hair, and looked around in amazement. The meadow was filled with sounds of barking and meowing. It was alive with birds, dogs, cats, mice, gerbils, in fact, almost every kind of critter you could imagine having as a pet. Suddenly, among the ruckus, Rick heard a very familiar bark. From out of the crowd of critters, a dog bounded towards him. Rick opened his arms wide. "Coco!" Coco leaped on Rick, knocking him to the ground, and proceeded to give him a good face licking. Then Coco sat up, looked at Rick, and cocked his head. "I thought Buster was just bringing back my squeaky bone, but he brought you back too." Coco lowered his voice. "You're not supposed to be here, Ricky." Rick looked around him. Where is here, Coco? The Rainbow Bridge. Rick looked puzzled. What is the Rainbow Bridge? It's not a what, it's a place. Come on, I'll show you. Coco trotted off down the path and Rick followed. They climbed over a rise in the meadow to see an enormous mountain of bones. It must have been as high as a house. Lying around the bone pile, dogs of all sizes were chewing happily. Coco licked his lips. You never run out of bones at the Rainbow Bridge. They continued down the path. A whizzing noise filled the air and a pair of dogs raced past them, chasing a frisbee. More whizzing, more frisbees flew by, followed by more dogs. Rick looked up at the hill. At the top was a large mechanical frisbee throwing device, operated by a dog pedaling a pulley device. The machine never gets tired of throwing them, unlike some people I know. Coco looked sideways at Rick, who pretended not to hear. Rick stepped off the path to get a better view as a cat paw appeared out of the foliage and swiped his ankle. Watch it, Ricky, you're stepping on catnip. Rolling fields of catnip stretched as far as Rick could see, with cattails contentedly waving above the catnip. Beyond it, rabbits were happily hopping among the daisies. Rick gingerly followed Coco over to a log bridge in the lush forest where thousands of birds fluttered about. Budgies, finches, parrots, all happily crowding the branches. Their sound of their singing was almost deafening. Rick stopped in front of a heap of couches. The sides had been shredded by cat claws, and almost every couch was occupied by snoozing dogs or cats. Coco pawed at a cushion. We'll call this our lounge area. And no one tells you to get off the couch? At first I felt a bit guilty, said Coco, but it soon passes. Coco stopped by a clear running stream and plunged his head into it. Bubbles came up from under the water. Coco lifted his head. You'll love this, Ricky. Rick shook his head. Thanks, but I'm not thirsty. No, remember that goldfish you had when you were 3? Bob? Yes. Bob was the best goldfish ever. I really miss Bob. Rick took a deep breath and stuck his head underwater. Sure enough, Bob swam up to him, wiggled his tail, and blew a stream of bubbles at Rick, which tickled his nose. Rick didn't know what to say. Everyone looked so happy. But what are you all doing here? Coco casually lifted his leg to pee on one of the many brightly painted fire hydrants that lined the path through the meadow, waiting for those who loved us to turn up. Rick was about to say something when a bell tolled in the distance. The meadow came alive with animals, and Rick was almost bowled over by the crowd that was loping, scampering, and scuttling across the meadow, all heading in the same direction. Coco pulled Rick's sleeve. Come on, Rick, it's pickup time. From out of the mist that marked the end of the meadow, a very old lady appeared, looking about nervously, unsure of where she was. Suddenly, an old cat raced out of the catnip meadow toward the old lady. But at the last minute, she remembered she was a cat and slowed to a casual stroll. She couldn't contain her excitement, though, and she leapt into the old lady's arms. Muffin! The old lady was so thrilled to see her cat again. Coco chuckled. I'm going to miss Muffin. She played the best game of tag. An old man seemed to appear out of nowhere. Coco sighed. Finally, a small, scruffy dog raced toward the old man, who exclaimed, Scout, you're here! Coco beamed. Scout had been waiting here the longest. Rick looked at the old lady and the old man, now happily playing with their long-lost pets. But Coco, who are these people? Coco wagged his tail. Just as a faithful pet gets old and passes on, so too must their human companions. After much purring and licking, the old man and his dog and the old lady and her cat stepped off the meadow and onto a bridge that stretched past a rainbow and into the shimmering haze in the distance. All the dogs barked goodbye and wagged their tails furiously. The cats, of course, pretended not to notice, but if you listened carefully, you could hear them contentedly purring. Where are they going, Coco? They're going to a happy place where they will always be together. Can we go too? Coco shook his head firmly. No, it's not your time, Ricky. Go home and live a long and wonderful life. I'll always be waiting for you here at the Rainbow Bridge. Now you must go. There is someone very special waiting for you. In silence, Rick and Coco watched the old couple and their pets until they disappeared in the haze. A loud fart announced that Buster had returned. "Climb on, Rick, I'm taking you home," said Buster. Coco licked Rick's hand one more time and looked up into Rick's eyes. "And Ricky, have lots of pets and love them all like you loved me." Buster rose into the air. The scene below began to fade, and the barks and chirps seemed to echo in the distance. But before it faded completely, Rick heard one last happy bark from Coco. Rick woke up in his own bed and looked around him. He felt under his pillow for the squeaky bone. It wasn't there. He finally looked down in his pajamas and gingerly picked off a large clump of smelly yellow dog fur. It wasn't a dream. The sound of Christmas music drifted up from the stereo downstairs. "It's Christmas morning!" Rick raced downstairs, bursting to tell his parents everything that happened last night. But he paused at the Christmas tree. He had promised Buster he wouldn't tell anyone what he had seen. Mom and Dad were in the kitchen, and sitting in front of them was a shaggy dog with a goofy grin on his face. The dog looked up at Rick and wagged his tail. Dad looked down at the dog. "We saw him at the animal shelter, Ricky. He was all alone and he needs a good home. Would you like to take care of him?" Rick grinned from ear to ear. "He's beautiful. I'm going to call him." A terrible smell filled the room, and the dog wagged his tail contentedly. Rick wrinkled his nose. "I'm going to call him Buster. Buster, want to go for a walk?" Buster jumped up and down and yipped happily. Dad looked at Mom. You'd almost think Buster understands what Rick is saying. Rick looked at his parents. "All dogs speak, we just don't listen properly. Come on, Buster." The two raced outside to throw snowballs and build snowmen. It was the perfect winter for a boy and his dog. And once again, there's the Rainbow Bridge. Animals are safe and happy after they pass on, until we can be reunited with them again. A visit to pet paradise. The end.